Good morning.
Good morning.
I would like to prepare you that this lesson is going to be a rather long one. But at the same time, I will promise you that one of the most interesting points will come at the end of the lesson. Yesterday, I emphasized that Martinus' analysis of the living being is a trinity consisting of a self, a creative ability, and a creative appearance, both physical and a mental or psychic appearance of the living being. And I shall shortly repeat the different kinds of appearance which are possible for the individual based on its 6 different organisms. The organism of instinct, the organism of gravity or explosionist energy, the organism of feeling, which is only a fetus or embryo existing in air in ray-like state on the spiritual plane, and an embryo of an intelligent body, and only a kernel of a body of intuition, and a degenerating body of memory. Today, I'm going to concentrate on the upper part of the living being, its creativity, ability, and the self. And I want to start by the self. I would like to have the next slide. The self, it would perhaps be better to call it the I, because when we use the word I, stand for I go, I see, I run, and so on, this I is the subject in us, the subject in the activity. Whereas when we use the word self, self by an old tradition in psychology is assigned to what we can experience of ourselves. And so the self, in a way, is an objective aspect of ourselves. But what we here have to cope with or to deal with is the inner subject in our existence, the real I behind all of our activities. And this I is the most important thing existing. And it is the most real thing, the most real thing existing. All other things, things which we are able to experience in the phenomenal world, are in some way illusions, because all of these things we experience are only able to have their reality on the basis of contrasts. We know that when we see a color, we know we can only experience that color on account of the opposite color. And so it is with all experiences in time and space. This thing, this reality, the I, is the only reality which only exists by its own. Its existence is not dependent on anything else. And it is the highest reality existing. Therefore, Martinus calls it the divine something. The divine something. And that is the closest definition is able to give of this I, because any other definition of it would be an illusionary definition of things from this world of phenomena. In fact, this I is the absolute contrast to all things in the world of phenomena. Then here we have a hint of how we can comprehend the reality of this I. By imagining the opposite, the contrast to the phenomenal world. Well, what are the dimensions of the phenomenal world? First and foremost, everything we can experience in this world are some kind of movement. We know that we can move as humans, animals can move, plants can move in the wind, and the physicians tell us that even the solid things in our surroundings are in their microparticles based on immense degrees of velocities of movement, and it is on the base of these velocities that we are able to experience these solid matter. Well, when the I is a contrast to movement, then the I must be identical with unmovable stillness. Often Martinus says that this I is identical with a fixed point. But when you say a fixed point, of course you mean something which is not movable. But at the same time, there is a little illusionary aspect in this word when you say a point, because by a point you think of an extension in space. And here we come to the next dimension of the world of phenomena. All phenomena have to take place in some degrees of spaces. My organism has a certain space, this room has a certain space, this globe has a certain space, and so on. And the space is some kind of a limitation in extension. The I is a contrast to this dimension too. So the I is infinite. It is without limitations. It is one with infinity. Moreover, things taking place in the phenomenal world are taking place in time, meaning that they start at one point, that they have a run of time, and they stop at another point in time. The I exists beyond this dimension of time. So it is identical with eternity. Here we see, by this way of thinking, we have got three important characteristics of the I, being unmovable stillness, being infinite, and being eternal. This is how a person gifted with intuitional talent are able to experience the I of the living beings. And to a man with intuition, these definitions are obvious. It is obvious that our I is unmovable, infinite, and eternal. But I think to more ordinary people, which in their daily thinking, to a higher degree, use their intelligence than their intuition, because intuition only is represented by a little kernel in our position in development now. Therefore, it would be useful when we talk about this subject of these characteristics to other people to explain in a more theoretical way an argument for these characteristics. Make it a hypothesis that the I has these properties. And I think it is possible to give logical and intellectual ground for these characteristics. Because only these characteristics are able to explain some phenomena in our daily life which have not been able to be explained by any other kind of philosophy, and especially not by the materialistic philosophy. And the two phenomena I'm talking about is the phenomenon of experience and the phenomenon of creation. And I'll start by the phenomenon of experience and try to explain how only if we accept that the I have these characteristics, being unmovable stillness, being infinite, and being eternal, only then we are able to, in a logical way, to explain how the phenomenon of experience is able to take place. We take that to experience for granted in our daily life. It's a commonplace notion to experience. We can all experience, but to explain how we can experience, that is an old and vexed problem for philosophy. And within the frame of a materialistic point of view, it is not possible to explain experience. And most of the outstanding philosophers within that field know that. Let me try to explain. If you think that all your organism is only composed of matter and energy, then your I, yourself, must too consist of matter and energy. But if that is the case, experience cannot take place. Because the pattern of energy within your experience, coming from the outer world through your senses, this picture of a pattern of energy would be either distorted or neutralized by the fact that your I, which is receiving this pattern of energies, is also some kind of energy and is changing from one moment to the next. So you would lack the consistence which we have in our experiences. You would not experience the same energy formation every time you see the same thing. This is a little complicated, I know, but now I shall give you an analogy from a very simple field. And the best analogy I know, namely a projector. We have here a projector, and in it comes slides. On the slide is a certain configuration or pattern of energy. And this energy pattern is projected on this wall. But in order to experience this energy pattern, this wall has to be white. We know that. If this wall also consisted of different kinds of patterns of energies, if there, for instance, were different drawings and different colors on this wall, and if these colors and figures changed all the time, well, then I'm sure you can imagine it would not be possible for us to have a clear picture of that special slide in the projector, which is projecting a special pattern energy. Because the figures on this white wall, if there were figures and drawings, these energies would either distort the pattern coming from the slide or neutralize it, and thereby we will have an ever-changing picture, and we would not be able to recognize the same slide twice, because the background had changed. Well, that is an analogy of the relation between our experiences, the energy pattern coming from the outward through our senses, and the background in us, our I, which absolutely have to be neutral compared with the energy pattern in order to give us a consistent experiences of the outer world. There must be in experience both an energy factor or variable and a neutral variable. And the neutral variable is our I. And how can this I be neutral at the white blackboard and be able to recognize the energies from the outer world? Well, that is only possible if the I just has these characteristics as mentioned before. Insofar as the I is neutral to movement, and that means it is unmoving, insofar it can recognize movements. Insofar as the I is without space, that means infinite, insofar it can recognize different forms of limitations and space in the experience. Insofar as the I is eternal, so then it is able to recognize different kinds of time, different things taking place in time in the outer world. So I think, in a simple, intelligent, intellectual way, you are able to argument for these characteristics of our inner I. This was the one phenomenon which these characteristics were able to give a logical explanation of. And the other phenomenon I want to explain is the phenomenon to create. We know that we can create. We can do many things. There are many things we cannot do, of course, but nevertheless we can do many things. We can sit down, we can stand up, we can go for a walk, and we can drive, and we can read, and we can do many things. And all that is the processes of creation. But in its inner principle, what is a creation? I think we could define creation in the way stated. To create is to choose some materials or energies and compose these energies in a special way according to the special purpose. I think it's a simple way to define creation. Simply choose some energies and materials according to the plan. But now again, I should argument for that within a frame of only a materialistic point of view, it is not possible to explain how we are able to create, how we are able to choose between different forms of energies and matters. If we imagine that we only consisted of different energies and matters, as they do in materialistic philosophy, then we would not be able to choose. There would exist no choice. There would exist nothing of what we call free will, because our own I would be some kind of energy too. And here we come to the point. Energy cannot choose energy. Energy can only influence energy and make its impact on energy. And how does it make its impact? It can only make its impact on energy in accordance with its own nature. Salt will always salt. Sugar will always sugar. Gas will always work like gas. Electricity will always work like electricity, and so on. So, if we only consisted of matter and energy, then the concept of choice would be the greatest illusion under the sun. Yet it is unexplainable that this concept at all has come into existence. Because all of life would consist of different kinds of energies blindly affecting and influencing each other, and we would be robots. And we would have no knowledge of free will and choice. Nevertheless, we have that. We have that concept. We know that we can choose between attitudes, between different actions, and so on. We know that. That's a fact. And then we have to explain, why can we do that? Well, that can be explained if we accept, I think, if we accept those characteristics of the I mentioned before. Because we must only if we have something within us which exists outside the realm or the field of energies of matters, we are able to use these energies and these laws. And this I is just existing beyond the field of energy. And from this position beyond, it is able to use these energies and is in reality the master of these energies. And how can that be explained? It can be explained in the way that as the I is an unmovable something, then it is in a way equal to all kinds of movements and is able to impact both small movements and fast movements and so on. And as the I is infinite, then it is independent of any kind of spaces, and thereby it has an equal influence. It has the possibility of equal influences on all kinds of spaces, it be small spaces, small particles, atoms, or it be immense kinds of spaces, galaxies, and so on. In principle, the I, being infinite, is independent of any kind of extension and space. And as the I is eternal, then it is equal to all kinds of time, small periods of time and great periods of time. So the I, as to the Lord, 1 second is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as a second. Well, I hope I have been able to explain that only if we accept these special characteristics of our inner I, then we are able to give a logical explanation of the fact that we are able to experience and the fact that we are able to create. But within the fields of energies and matter, we see the law of cause and effect. And this law is very stable, it's very firm, and Martinus is emphasizing this law very much. Due to this law, we can use nature. And due to this law, science can be a reality. How could science be a reality if we could not rely on the laws of nature? If we could not be sure that the different kinds of energies would work in the same way every time we use them? And only by that we can live in our daily life and have our experiences and get intelligence. Intelligence is explained in one way, simple, to get more and more knowing of how the energies of our surroundings are working. And how should we get this knowing if these energies did not work in the same way every time? But in the materialistic philosophy, you have misused these laws, of course, of effect, and you have overlooked a special point. You have overlooked the starting choice, the initial choice. Whenever we make a machine, we have to start by a choice. We know that from in our own daily field. A car cannot run only by itself. It cannot start only by itself. There has to be a living being, a human being in question, who is going to start the car. And we also know it's necessary that we steer the car, otherwise it will run from the road. And even when we make our big and complicated data processing machines with far-ranging programs, also in this case we have an initial choice. It's necessary that a human being with his intelligence have chosen what material to use, what programs this machine have to run according to. And the machine cannot go outside the range of those ideas laid down in the machine of its creator. I would like to have before I leave this simple, you'll see we have the I represented here, and here is the creative ability, and these circles going out from the eye and returning to the eye again represent the energies in time and space, the created things. And we see how the created things are moving, are having a certain space. For instance, this one contrary to this one and to this one, and are taking place in a certain time, having a beginning and having an ending. Whereas the self or the I is the absolutely fixed point behind all these kinds of movements. And the next slide, please. Now we have seen that in principle, on account of this I, we are masters of time and space and have a mastery of all the energies, in principle. But we also know from our daily life that we cannot do whatever we like. There are limitations for our free will. There are mathematical problems we cannot solve. There are languages we cannot speak. There are many things we cannot do. So there must be an element in the structure of the living being which is, in a way, breaking the outholding of free will. And this element is the second principle in the living being. It is the creative ability. Only in the degree in which we have developed different talents, we are able to have free will. If we have developed talents within many foreign languages, well, to some same degree, we are able to have free will, or to unfold our free will within these fields, meaning that we can have our wishes fulfilled within these fields. And for instance, within mathematics, when we have got talent within those fields, well, then we can have our wishes and our wants fulfilled within these fields to the degree that we have developed talent for these activities. So this field is a very important field within the living being, and I am going to give a closer explanation of it. First and foremost, it is an array-formed organism which only exists in ray forms and is always existing above every of the 6 bodies I talked about yesterday. And all of these bodies are having their source or origin in this higher spiritual ray-formed body. Every one of these bodies are having their inner kernel in this field. And these kernels we see here. Martinus calls them the talents of the basic energies. And you see there is one for each of the great basic energies, at the same time being the inner kernel for each of these of the corresponding organisms. These talent kernels are eternal ones, meaning they have never started and they will never cease to exist. If one of these ceased to exist, life would simply stop to exist. All of life, experience, creation, is dependent on the unfolding, outfolding, and collaboration of all of these 6 fundamental energies. So they belong to the, so to speak, equal equipment of the living being. Besides this, there is some mechanisms in this field which is not depicted directly on the symbolic diagram. Some mechanisms regulating our appearance in this world either as a male or as a female. And this mechanism is moreover regulating our evolution, our sexual evolution. Now, as animals and as human beings, we appear as men and women, but gradually we will become more double-poled, Martinus says, and we will have the opposite pole developed in our own organism and mentality, and when we become perfect human beings, when we become Christ-like beings, we will be neither men nor women, we will become simply humans. And we will have the best of both, the best of the characteristics of both sexes inbuilt in our way of living. Besides these organs and these eternal talent kernels, we have some talent kernels which are temporary. And these temporary talent kernels have started at some specific period in our life, and they have ceased in another period. And these talent kernels are the root of all our habits and our special abilities. For instance, our ability to speak languages, or to write, or to read, or to go, or to function in different ways, or to make music. All of these specific talents are dependent on these temporary talent kernels also existing in this field. But they are temporary, meaning that they only belong in a specific period of our eternal life. That period in which they have a logical context, in which they are giving us the possibility to experience some special activities, special fields in life which we like to experience. And here we are with an important point. Every one of these temporary talents starts by a want. And this want is rooted through an eternal desire, the primordial desire, which again is rooted in the very I. But in the end, every specific want is rooted in the I. And when we want to perform a new thing, to be clever within a new specific field, then we are starting the development of a new talent. And this, the first start, Martinus calls the A stage of the talent. If you really want to have a talent within that field, we know that we have to make many exercises. We have to try again, do many exercises within the field, and we know also that exercises make the master. Often we see people train within a special area year after year, and Martinus teaches that often they repeat this training in common incarnations and go on with the same training, and in some common incarnations they will become masters, real masters within that. The training period is called the B stage of the talent. And the final stage, when you become a real master within that field, is called the C stage. And that is the fulfilled stage within a certain field. And this stage is characterized by the fact that you are able to act almost automatically within that field. A great master within music, for instance, is able to perform his music without thinking of the single detail. They simply function automatically, and he can use his conscious activity on greater fields, new fields. And this automatical way in which we act in the C stage depends on this talent kernel which we have built up, created in our super consciousness, which this field, our eternal body of creation, is also called our super consciousness. And this talent kernel has to be understood as an energy center which is made in such a way that it is able to steer and control all the specific functions and movements which are necessary within performing the performance in question. And as long as you like this performance and enjoy it, as long this temporary talent kernel will exist, and nothing from the outer world will be able to destroy it. This field where we collect all of our talents is an absolutely protected area, because it has in it the most valuable treasure we have. The best we have are our talents. What we have by our own struggling, by our own efforts, trained and gained and acquired. That is the best we have. And therefore, they are absolutely protected, existing in this field, and they cannot be destroyed from outside. not even through diseases, not even through rays, X-rays, or rays from atomic bombs, or any kind of poison, or any other kind of destructive energies from this world. Nothing of these energies can come into this field because it exists, created by the seventh energy, the mother energy. And the mother energy is another energy. It's an energy existing above the other six fundamental energies. So none of these energies can come in and interfere with the talent kernels in our superconsciousness. Only one thing is able to make these talent kernels decrease, and degenerate. And that is our own want. Our own want. Simply that we have become tired from this activity. We have experienced it so much that we don't like it anymore, and we are more inspired by other activities, other fields, and we leave these activities, and in the same degree you leave these activities, you gradually forget how to do these activities, and this talent kernel in that way gradually decreases. Based on a natural process coming from the I. So it is the I who its wants determine the growth and unfoldment of a talent, the development of a talent, and it is the I who determines whether a talent should stop or end. And the same is the case with all of our habits, and also our bad habits. I'm sure we have many bad habits too, and habits are created in all the same way. If they are really our habits, things we are doing again and again, then they are crystallized in a center in our superconsciousness, and we can only get rid of that habit in the same way, simply stopping that activity, wanting to be rid of this activity, and ask for help to be able to be rid of it. But in the long run, it is necessary that you yourself honestly try to stop this kind of activity. And only in that way this talent will decrease. This principle of talent kernels is a very important principle of life, because this principle is the basis of the principle of growth. Yesterday I pointed out that everything in nature and in life is taking place in growth. Plants are growth, animals are growth, we are growth, our organism is growing, and all of these fundamental organisms are growing in a certain order of succession. You shall hear more about in our lectures. And our specific talents connected with our actual appearance, our actual organism, our habits and so on, are based on this principle, and so is our moral possibilities, our moral talents. Also, our moral talents, Martinus explains, are under the growing principles, because they are based on talents. And that is why Martinus often emphasizes that you cannot blame a person for acting as he does. You cannot blame him. The criminal, the act of the worst criminal, you cannot blame this act, because he cannot act otherwise than in accordance with the experiences he has had and the talent he has developed. But he has the possibility of developing talent, and he will automatically develop moral talent on the basis of his experiences. Nevertheless, sometimes it looks like, and now I'm coming to a thing, the stuff I will end with. Often it looks like that a person is performing a jump in his moral evolution. Often when we are counseling a person, perhaps a client, and we are recommending this person to have a new attitude, trying to be a better person, trying to be tolerant, and trying to feel love and love his fellow men, and as our friends from America say in a very beautiful way, to love without any conditions. In many of these cases, we in fact experience that they are able to do that they are able to get this new attitude and be a more happy human. And it looks like as they were performing a jump in their development. But I'm sure this apparent jump is not a violating of this fundamental principle of growth and the principle of talent development. It is not. But I think we have to recognize that behind these apparently jumps there are a silent growth. And this silent growth based on experiences men have in his daily life. This silent growth is not always on the surface. It's not always that we are aware of this growth. And Martinus emphasizes this. This often teaches that man has many more talents than he knows, and many more possibilities and many more experiences which he is not using as fully as he would be able to use these experiences he really has. And I would like to give an analogy of this principle of the silent growth behind the surface of our being and these sudden jumps. And that analogy is from nature. From nature we get all good analogies. And you know, in the springtime, the sun is rising on the sky for every day a little step higher and higher in the springtime. And even though there are clouds on the sky a day or a week or even a month, we know that behind these clouds the sun is in a gradual way going higher and higher from day to day. And when, after a period with clouds on the sky, the sun is coming through again, suddenly we see the sun higher on the sky and giving more warmth, and we say, hey, suddenly spring and suddenly summer came. But behind this, we have this gradual growth. And this is the principle I think is taking place behind our experience. And that is the thing which is very important for us to recognize. First, that we cannot help our fellow men who are in mental trouble. We cannot help them to be more loving people if they have not the basic experiencing for this attitude. But if they have these basic experiences, then we can help them to use these experiences, perhaps in a way they we never know anything about before. So I think the highest mission that we have when we help our fellow men is that of the midwife. That is simply the method we know of from Socrates. And that is the same method we still have to use. We have to help babies into this world, but it is not us who are promoting the growth of the baby. That is the baby itself by its growth. But we are helpers. We are assisting in the birth process. And we cannot help a human being to birth before it is ready for this birth. Otherwise, this being will not be able to understand us, will not be able to understand our recommendation, and we will perhaps be very disappointed why this person cannot understand that love is the only and real way to exist thereby. We will perhaps be disappointed, but there's nothing to be disappointed over, because we are only collaborators with God. And God is taking care of the growth process together with the person in question. And if the person in question lacks some experiences, some fundamental experiences, for instance some sufferings, then God will give him these experiences in his daily life. And that is the part of the teaching of God. That is his part. He will take care of the experiences, but we are only existing, and we can be there, we can hope, we can pray that we will be allowed to be there in the right moment when the being in question is mature for it, and be the person who are able to make this individual notice what is going on and help him to have this new attitude. And I think I should stop here. annihilation of a habit must be a want to, a want to be rid of it. So, first, when you are having a talent and a habit and a talent is the same, I would say. First, when you are having a talent, it is your conscious directing want which is the dynamic force behind the development of this habit. And when you like to be rid of this habit, then again it is your want and your mental activity which is a dynamic means by which you gradually will be able to solve or to destruct this habit.
Might the original want, because maybe the habit has gone along so long that you maybe the original want is in the unconscious?
Yes, that would be the case. The original want is not anymore a want. It belongs to the past. You have got new experiences, you have got new ideas, perhaps, and then you have new wants, but you still have the old habits. And then you have this fight between the new wants and the results of the old wants. Okay?
Along the same idea, would another way of saying it be that you make an original decision and you find out that doesn't work out? So then you make a new decision, that would be a new one. And then you're substituting the new for the old, and if you pay attention to the new, the old sort of can disappear over a period of time for lack of attention.
That's right. That is the case.
You don't give energy to the old anymore, you give energy to the new.
Right. That is giving energy, meaning want it, meaning performing that, meaning having attention, just like you say.
Okay. A separate question. My understanding is we originally were sort of more sort of a real human being in the sense that we were both male and female, and then we got separated. What was the point of that, and what's the point of having to try to get back to that?
You see, that is the subject of a whole new lecture. That is a very great field within Martinez cosmology, and a very important field. You see, there are circuits within that field too, and I will not. I think it would be best not to teach any more about that now.
Well,
but now we have. If you want it, and I can thank you to unsure that, perhaps Tay and Moons later on in his lectures.
Yes, and if it is not coming in the lectures, I'll take it when I go through the slides in the morning.
Yes. So
it will come, at least.
Thank you.
Well, we have promised. More things? Yes?
The ego, who is now the higher, who is higher self, who is one with all, could send an impulse to the next, and there might be misunderstanding with it. I mean, the impulse might have been taking something, one from the ego, but there could be a discrimination also, misusing of energy, and therefore the ego might take the energy, might take another one and try.
Yes, that is the case. That is the inner principle of our mental evolution. We are taking our own experiences. Within a very great field, we really have free will. We can use these materials in our daily life. We are able, for instance, to make bombs and make conflicts and make war and all that. And that is, I think, a very gives a very big impression of how within how great fields we have free will. We have the possibility of experimenting with the materials and also with our mental material. We can think whatever we will of our neighbor beings. We can hate them, we can love them, we can be irritated, we can do what we will, but we always get the consequences. And the consequences, they are the teachings we get from life. And only by this teaching we can learn, and that was the point of what you said, I think. Only by these consequences, these experiences, we can leave that combination of energies and try another, and gradually find the right way of using the inner fields, the right way of living. What's that called?
Yeah, so I wondered in which field probably. Is it in the lower field that the error comes, or is it, I mean, the higher field is without the error of misusing probably the energy that is taking, that is.
You see, well, perhaps I
would be on the chart.
Perhaps I understand you. You see, the inner functioning of our eternal body is based on a logic which cannot be broken down, which we cannot experiment with. There is here an eternal rhythm and an eternal order of succession of unfolding of these different organisms, making the big fundamental laws of life. And we cannot experiment with the eternal aspects of our being, because they are the fundaments for our eternal existence. So it is only what is below this field which is subject for experimentation. Yes, that was a good question. Thank you.
I have an analogy that I use often. It's very ordinary. I think often that those desires that come to us from the higher self, the ego that Stevie talked about, are misinterpreted. And we get a desire, often I think of it this way. Some person may feel that he needs to build a new house, and I've seen people do this. They build a new house, and then they are not satisfied, and they build another house. They do the material house, whereas the desire that's coming through is to build a new house inwardly, the house of the soul. And I think this happens, that we often misinterpret.
Yes, but you see, what you are pointing at, I think that is impulses coming from our developing spiritual bodies, and coming in an unconsciously way to us. But when we have many fine impulses from these spiritual bodies, but when they come to our actual day consciousness, which is this organism and this brain, then they are often misunderstood, misinterpreted, so that they, so to say, become stamped by our actual wants and our physical wants and our material wants. For instance, at night, we often at night have impulses from the working of our higher organisms. And that sometimes we can remember these impulses when we wake in the morning. And when we concentrate and when we meditate, that is in a way that we try to have this brain, this physical consciousness, to be relaxed and without desire and wishes, and have these spiritual bodies working so that we can hear or be aware of deeper motives and intentions in us. But these impulses, all of these impulses, of course, they are all coming here from, but they are passing this way, and from here and into our day consciousness. You see? Yes?
Well, of course, the higher ego is also affected by cosmic impulses that are not of the ego, but of the whole race of humanity, because it's one with all. So if an impulse comes and of some certain ray that is now stronger than another ray, then maybe the lower part is not ready to take it. So there might be also differences. Now, if we are not growing on our lower levels and not adjusting ourselves to the development of the whole, then there might be many difficulties in between these levels.
That will be difficult. That is difficult on this level, not on these levels. Not on this level.
This is all on the.
In this field, the first, I don't know whether you have a clear comprehension of this question. I will explain.
I don't know, I can try. This is the superconsciousness, and this is the subconsciousness.
Oh.
So, within psychology, the subconsciousness, the word subconsciousness, is used in another way than Martinus uses it. All this for Martinus is subconsciousness. The spiritual bodies and the physical body. And when you speak about impulses and rays for humanity, well, it is so that when this single human being, which is, as we see here, a terrestrial man, is incarnated on earth, it is because the rays in the aura or electromagnetical field of this human being is on wavelength with the evolution on earth and with the rays which are coming to the earth as evolution, the new world impulse. So gradually, if there are people who are not on wavelengths with this new world impulse, well, then they will not incarnate on earth. They who are able to follow this impulse, they will incarnate here. Others who are not, well, they will incarnate on other globes where they are fitting into the wholeness. That is the reason why these living beings are on earth and here are able to receive the new world impulse. But as the living beings are on many different levels or steps of evolution, some living beings are able to receive the new world impulse and accept it before others. Then they are the pioneers, and gradually, through their work, more and more will be able to accept the new impulse and to receive the new impulse and to accept it.
Well, I understand the question as well as this New Age impulse or alignment with the will of God, which would be the same thing.
Yes.
Why there is difficulty on the physical plane is because sometimes if our life is based on selfish desires
yes.
and not on the desire to fulfill the will of God, then of course there will be this conflict.
Yes.
And there has to be this conflict to get us in line.
Yes.
And I think we have to realize that it isn't just the desire we have to think about. It is aligning our desires with the greater will, our little wills with the will of God.
Yes.
In order to fulfill the plan.
Yes, that's right.
So it isn't just how we function in this, but it's how we function in accordance with a greater will.
Yes.
And once we hook our little wills onto this greater will, and then we can start moving in the right direction, then we've got control.
Yes, that's right. And gradually we got such experiences, where we have followed our own will, and then we get the experiences. And that is based on a cosmic principle, the principle of hunger and saturation. And that is the reason why we gradually change our wants. And when we really have got enough of experiences of wanting and really want to get other experiences in other directions, well, there we more and more come on wavelength with the new world impulse, gradually.
I'd like to see if I can put some things together here. About when one makes extra big step in consciousness, or a big step, and I'm thinking particularly of when we have been able to, say, teach the emotional maturity instruction in the prison. And the way I understand it, and the way that Mr. McDougall presents it, and relating it to what you said this morning, would be that when one is ready or has been taught and can conceive of and can utilize the idea of unconditional love and forgiveness, that it would look like he makes a leap into a higher or super consciousness, that Mr. McDougall says that ruka, which is a word in Aramaic that means spirit, that spirit gives extra energy to him, like perhaps the teaching would be like putting fertilizer on a plant, and then spirit would be like extra sunshine, extra light, that would help him also to make this higher step. Then he would have to, he makes a higher step, but he would have to integrate it then, or bring it down and utilize it as growth. But there is this extra step.
Yes, and I think that is the same as when you pray for strength,
Yes.
as we all do. Then we get a supply of energy, and but this supply of energy, I think, is a help to self-help.
Yes.
Yes, and in the long run, you are again dependent on what qualifications you have had,
Yes.
how you can use the fine things
Sure.
you have got.
Sure.
So the creating force is the will. I mean, that's the creating force in man, the will. And therefore it has to be through the person themselves, through the will. You can't help another person. You can try as much as you want. You can give them every piece of love you have, but they must do the actual creating in that.
They have to want to be helped.
Yes. And the want, yes, I would accept that.
Yeah. I mean, the will, that is a wanting, yes, it's that.
We, in this course, the will is, just as you are saying, it is the will or the desire or the want of the person that has to open himself and to reach out and to seek, not only just want, but put a little extra will behind it to seek.
More? And now you must remember what I have intended here was only to to give the fundamental structure of the living being. Now, in the lectures to come by Tay and Betzakte and Mons, you're going to hear more about the processes, how the living being is developed in detail. Isn't it so?
We hope we shall be able.
Well, shall we stop now?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.